This program is designed to provide general information with regards to the subject matters covered. This information is given with the understanding that neither the hosts, guests, sponsors, or station are engaged in rendering any specific and personal, medical, financial, legal, counseling, professional service, or any advice. You should seek the services of competent professionals before applying or trying any suggested ideas.
Good morning, true seekers and true crime junkies. Welcome back to another episode of Hit the Road Jack, Finding the Zodiac. We're going to go ahead and climb right on into the video with Aphrodite Jones, and then we're going to pick up from last week's presentation and move on from there. So let's look and see how the interview went with Dennis Kaufman and myself on Aphrodite Jones True Crimes, the Zodiac.
It's interesting that Dennis Kaufman has spent a long time trying to convince people that his stepfather was the Zodiac, and so much so that he's devoted his life to it. It's taken over. It's become an obsession.
Before I told anybody my theory, I went and I researched it for 3 months to make sure that I wasn't accusing someone that was innocent. Wanted to make sure that I was right. And I was getting the runaround from several law enforcement agencies that I was working with at the time as to Jack's involvement in the case. So I decided to call him up and just ask him, see what he had to say. I told him I discovered who he was and I wanted to write a book, but I wouldn't publish it until after he's dead. And that's when he agreed to give me all the information and he started telling me stories, just like it was no big deal. I got the whole thing on tape.
You got it on tape?
Yes.
Your conversations with Jack?
Yes, I do.
And he admits to being the Zodiac?
Yes, he does.
I haven't cut anybody's throat lately, so... Okay, well, that's all right. You know, I got tired of doing it. I hear you. Hey.
I had to find a way to make him feel comfortable about talking to me. He didn't know I went to the police at the time. I had to act like it was no big deal. I had to put myself on his level, if you will, to get him to open up to me.
I've been tempted to, see how much I could write down, and remember. Right. But, of course, my memory's not like it used to be. Right. And it couldn't be published until after my death. I'll give you my word on that. Most of the things I could deny, they have no proof. Right, it could just be like circumstantial. Yeah, I'm not too worried about it. It's what the people I know would think. Right. If it was a known fact that it was me.
In Sacramento, handwriting expert Nanette Bardo studies the letters of the Zodiac. She's surprised to find herself engulfed in the mystery that has become an obsession of so many others.
Would you say that you can break the code of who the Zodiac is through the handwriting?
If forensic science is correct and what we've been taught so far, absolutely, this should place the author just like fingerprints. And the handwriting cannot lie, so even if somebody was backing their suspicions by lies, I'd be able to detect that inside the handwriting. I do believe to a certain degree this individual was attempting to cover up some of his letters and his writing. However, we know that we all fall back in time to our natural uses.
What do you mean by falling into natural uses? Can you please explain that to me?
Let me take one of these letters that he started with here. This one, basically you can see at the beginning where he attempted to start writing like out of the school book. Perfect form, everything's nice and perfect. And then as you get down to the bottom, you see it start to begin to deteriorate and become more of a sloppy mess than the top was. Generally, when you start looking at for disguised writing, you start at the bottom of the letter instead of at the top, because they're going to revert back to their subconscious ways once their hand gets tired and their head gets tired of thinking how to do this.
By studying his writings and his actions, experts gain insight into the killer's possible motivations and the speculation. More than 30 years later, a revelation in the case is about to unfold, and it promises to be a bombshell. stepfather, Jack Torrance, is the notorious Northern California serial killer known as the Zodiac. Jack admitted to it in a tape-recorded interview with Dennis. And now Kaufman tries to prove that his stepfather was telling the truth.
Can you show me what you consider to be the most compelling piece of evidence that your stepfather was the Zodiac?
After I put the composites together, it was uncanny, the resemblance. Then I started taking some of the Zodiac letters and some of Jack's writing and finding the same words and putting them together. And you can see the similarities. The top lines are Zodiac's and the word line right beneath them are Jack's. Zodiac's, Jack's, Zodiac, Jack, all the way down.
Dennis was very particular about how he described the handwriting of his stepfather, Jack, and the handwriting of the Zodiac, to the point that when I got to the handwriting analyst, I was ready to see what became an undeniable comparison between these two samples of writing. There are too many commonalities there for this not to be the same person.
To prove his case, Kaufman delivers samples of his stepfather's writings to handwriting expert Nanette Bardo. She looks for telltale signs that could link Jack Torrance to the known letters of the Zodiac.
A tick mark can be something that is executed on entrance stroke or on the exit stroke, and it's a leaving of ink that it is not part of the actual letter itself.
This is the kind of A I would write, okay? I also write that type of an A. It's either A like that or A like that.
Okay, and here's your tick mark.
There's my tick mark, that little thing that came off there.
And if I saw an A produced, in which case that tick mark wasn't like that, yet every single one you do,
again.
I see it, then if that's missing, then I can't identify you as the author because that's missing. That's something you do all the time subconsciously. You still can't not do it, it's in there.
Wow.
There's a double line in there. These are the type of identifying factors that I'm looking for. It's not just a simple, did he make his F the same way? Is there tick marks at the top and the bottom of the S?
So I can't help but doing that. Here,
Yeah, you can't
switched
do
it. No, I switched it.
I know, to the inside, but it's still there.
Oh my goodness.
See, the thing is that I might be able to place 5 or 6 of your habits in here, but that's not enough for me to say you're this author. I have 42 just on paper, let alone the other ones that I've found since I continue the investigation.
Wait a minute, when you say you have 42, you have 42 identical marks between Jack Torrance and the Zodiac letters?
Yes. There's nothing that I've looked for out of the Zodiac letters that I've not been able to find in Jack's writing.
Nothing?
Nothing. This was one of my very first finds in the initial 20 that I looked for. And the letter O was actually one of my favorites because right here you find an identical O. Flattened on the bottom side instead of rounded with that same hook that comes through. It's almost egg-shaped instead of round like an O.
Egg-shaped. Okay, I'm seeing that now. I get it.
Another thing that you're taught is you're not supposed to be able to find spacing between the letters identical between one person and the next. So if you go through here, these are all of the ones that I actually pulled out of Jack's writing. You can see where, the PRO, stop, G, wisdom, harass, meant, period. However you want to say that, because. And then you go down into the Zodiacs, and you get pretty much the same thing. Airplane, effective, asked. Is some very, very unusual spacing habits there, but they both seem to like to break up their words.
So now what is your opinion of Dennis Kaufman?
I think Dennis really, really does have the stepfather of the Zodiac Killer.
The final piece of the puzzle, as far as Dennis Kaufman is concerned, is found inside a piece of equipment in Kaufman's storage room. For years, Kaufman has suspected that his stepfather, Jack Torrance, is the killer known as the Zodiac. What he finds in storage now convinces him beyond a shadow of a doubt that he had been living with the man who terrorized Northern California for more than 40 years.
Tell me about when you found the mask and how it was that you came to have this speaker of Jack.
In fact, I'm surprised I even still had the thing. But in 1990, and don't even ask me why I remember it, but I do remember it, Jack asked me about the thing. He said, if you ever get rid of that thing, I want it. And I thought, I didn't think nothing of it at the time, you know what I mean? It's like, why would he want this? What would he do with it? But when I was cleaning out my stuff, that's when it clicked. I ran across it. I was like, you know what? It's like, why did Jack ask me about this thing? For some reason, I decided to take it apart. And when I did, you saw what I found in it. I'm saying, when I found that, my heart skipped a couple beats, let me tell you.
Dennis discovers what seems to be the notorious Zodiac mask. Could it be the same one worn by the killer when he attacked Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard at Lake Berryessa? Kaufman turns the mask over to the FBI for testing. Aphrodite Jones learns that to date, the FBI has not released any details on what they have done with the mask. But for Kaufman, this is the Zodiac's version of a smoking gun.
Do you think people don't want the case solved because it's more fun to have this mystery?
Absolutely. As sick as it sounds, that's absolutely right. That's exactly a fact. They'd rather have a mystery there because a mystery is always funner. But people forget one thing. There's innocent people that died, and there's families out there that don't have resolution. So it's not just a mystery to them, it's real life. It's like a curse, man.
It is a curse.
It is. It's a serious curse, and people get sucked up into it. They don't even realize they're getting sucked up into it. I've seen it happen, and it's still not over. It's close. It's close, man. It's got to be, because I can't take it much more. I really can't. I just want it to end. I just want it to be over.
According to the FBI and what they're telling us, that indeed they do match Jack Torrance's writing with the known samples of the Zodiac. If in fact they are able to make that announcement conclusively, there will be justice and conclusion for the victims, and I think Dennis Kaufman will finally be able to put his head on the pillow at night and rest, because this man has no peace.
The curse of the Zodiac haunts even this seasoned crime writer in her investigation. Do people like Dennis Kaufman and Annette Bardo hold the key to bringing about justice to the families victimized by this serial killer? Anyone living here knows that until this mystery is solved, there is still a chance that he could strike. And once again, hold this storybook part of the country in the strangling clutches of the killer known as the Zodiac.
All right, so I'm glad that we finally got to show everybody that particular segment, or at least that portion of it. I do believe that you can find that video on Investigation Discovery if you have access to their channel. You can stream it anytime you like and see the full story, which again, we've already talked about. A majority of the images and the filming was copyrighted perpetually by Tom Voigt, some by Graysmith too. So we're going to be talking about Graysmith here shortly. I'm going to be picking up and moving into an article that was written about him and the many lies that he tells in his books. The bottom line here is that we have two individuals who are disinforming the public and at the same time reaping the perpetuity and the royalty and the money from the case, whether it was selling books or selling information, as though they are the kings of knowledge when it comes to the Zodiac. And they like to bash other people, which we're going to get into some of that here shortly as well. But one of the things I'm going to turn to the presentation now at this point is became very apparent to me as I was watching this video over and over again to become prepared for today's podcast, is that we look at the video that Aphrodite Jones used from Dennis Kaufman, where we see that the light is brightly shining on the hood, and that actually makes the emblem appear white. So I would have to guess that if the sun is shining in the direction of the zodiac from where he's coming, that may also illuminate it. We did see in Robert Graysmith's book that he alluded to it having an orange tint from the glowing sun, and we can see that based on the high resolution pictures of this particular knitting that it is actually a gold thread that was not discounted by the FBI, by the way, you guys. So when this hood was turned over, it wasn't like they came back and said, no, that was for sure white. They actually took this hood in and ran tests on it. So we'll talk about that at a later date too. I just wanted to kind of give you guys an idea of how that thought process works when it comes to lighting on it, that it could have looked white, but it also could have had that amber hue that Graysmith talked about because the thread is actually gold. Last week, we ended talking about the 2001 greeting card that was sent to the San Francisco Chronicle, and we had Harriette Sucher actually do a decode on this particular letter. And obviously, it was very strikingly similar to the 1986 letter, again, written by the Zodiac. So I went ahead and ran forward with this. I did actually find the message. Harriet was able to send that over to me. And it does say, it has similar complaints, actually, as the greeting card sent to Senator Voinovich in, I think, 2009, this says 2000, but I don't think it was 2000. I believe it was sent. But anyways, talking about the Muni drivers. And of course, this particular message continues to say Muni drive, which again is that cross reference between communications that I say the Zodiac likes to play. Now, I went ahead and pulled the actual letter A's because that's what struck me when I looked at this particular communication, because it is a format that Jack has attempted to omit from his writing when writing most of them. And I do see places in the letters where he's left remnants of these A's, and that tells me that yes, he can't completely drop them from his arsenal at all times. But let's just take a look at one of the other features that I found, which are these tau T's, where the T is actually curved backwards instead of forwards in the proper direction. And that to me has always been an insignia of JT. So look at the J in just down here. Again, we have the J and we have the T, and that was just by him transposing the actual letter itself or reversing the letter itself. And many people may want to play on the reversal role of it, but honestly speaking, I think that is one of the biggest clues that it is Jack Terrence that's involved with this. And then another cross across in the communications was the here wishing you, because we also have greeting cards that were sent in the Donna Last case, which again, best wishes. We're seeing kind of some of the same running themes that go through these communications. When I went to look at the letter A's, I cropped these ones right here out of that greeting card from 2001, and it didn't take me but 3 communications of Jack's. And I have 165, so I'm sure I would find a lot more of these A's. But inside of 3 communications that I looked at, I was actually able to find the very style of these letter A's that are found in this greeting card, with this flat top, the long oval and bubbly shaped bottom, to this very thinly written loop down here, which is found in this particular one right there. And then, of course, this one that just kind of has the arched back. We see the arched back, and again, that bubble that protrudes from the bottom of the oval. So again, we have this arched top. There's that arched top again, and again, the bubble. So I was able to make an identification of these letter A's actually matching all of the letter A's in Jack's arsenal, which was a stupendous find, because it only makes the handwriting identification that much more solid. Now, Robert Graysmith was also a benefactor, like I had said before, in the perpetuity of the images. And it's no coincidence that his new book, Zodiac Unmasked, was printed 2002, the Berkeley hardcover edition, and 2003, the Berkeley mass market edition. And at this point in 2002 and 2003, you got to remember they already received this greeting card in 2001, and the decode on that says that the hood is in the PA system. Now, all of a sudden, we see Zodiac Unmasked being printed, and we see a whole new version of that mask than we did in in the original. In fact, I have a picture here because what we were looking at one point in time is this particular square top, like the bottom of a paper sack is actually on top of the head. And we're going to break that down right now, but I'm going to tell you that this is one of the first #1 lies out of Robert Graysmith, because this image that's now being promoted all over the internet is actually in his book, and it says Zodiac in Costume by Robert Graysmith. So author's line cut illustration of Zodiac in costume at Lake Berryessa. So it's Robert Graysmith that is promoting this square top version of the hood that is, I mean, again, highly inconceivable that this would even stand up or appear to be square on somebody's head. If it's made out of material, it would have drooped and flopped and had a completely different look to it. So it's ridiculous that they're showing you this. And I just want to remind everybody, when you see this type of hood that's being portrayed, it is completely false.
So Graysmith drew that? It was a
Yeah.
recreation. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So I did not know that.
It's almost like a photo.
Yeah, well, he's attempting to make it look as though that's the style of the hood. And I actually, I've pulled a couple excerpts in this when we get to the hood part, as I discuss that once again, just to show people the differences between what Brian Hartnell said and now what Robert Graysmith is promoting in his books. They're two totally different hoods. Like, he's just made this random square top hood up just and not coincidentally, right after Jack writes a greeting card that's decoded to say the hood's in the PA system. All of a sudden, poof, we've got a new version of the hood that comes out that doesn't even match the original composite drawn by the SFPD. I had this really weird poster, and every now and again, somebody comes in and says this: I'm glad I found your channel. Very interesting stuff. I always like to kind of research and click on them and see who they are, but this guy almost was a little scary. It's Mr. JSV650. As I go to check out his page to see who he is, because I always like to know if they're involved with Void, if they're going to cause trouble on the posts or what it is that's going on. And this guy's got knives yielded here on the front of it. And his description says, thanks for viewing my channel. This channel will be primarily for reviews of things that I enjoy, including knives, guns, and watches.
Wow.
Right? That's kind of a little scary, ain't it? I was like, who is this guy and why does he want me to know this? So anyways, I responded. I said, very cute. I like that your channel plays into guns, knives, and other related things to the Zodiac. Ha ha ha. So does mine, but more in the axe and knife throwing, guns, and other weapons of convenience, I think I put.
Okay. It's funny that he says watches too, because Arthur Lee Allen used to wear a Zodiac watch.
Yeah, the Zodiac diver watch got played into the whole thing, but clearly watches, and they were Timex. I think they were junky watches. They weren't even good watches that the Zodiac was leaving behind. But it happened to be named the Zodiac, and it got a lot of press, and maybe that in itself was also a push. The company might very well have known what was going on in the media world with the Zodiac at that time, that they released a watch called the Zodiac, which Zodiac falls in line with diving, and it is a diver's watch, but the play on that would have been huge, right? I think they would have sold more watches just knowing that the Zodiac Killer existed.
Yeah, it's an eerie marketing tool.
Right. So here on this particular slide, I had been contacted through the Talk4TV website on my podcast, and it was a gal that says, I have crucial information, took me regarding identification of Zodiac that I've been trying to get to someone that has the resources to investigate. I've tried so hard to get this to someone for years. I was nearly a victim, and it took me 30 years to know who this man was. Now it's been over 40 years that I've known and tried to contact every police agent or every agency possible, but guess they just think I'm a crazy old lady. I have the link you need to bring this together. I don't want any publicity and only want to be able to get the info to someone that can bring justice to this case. You are on the right path, but are missing the one thing that can lead to solving this case. She says, how did she hear about me? It was on my BitChute channel podcast. So I do have a BitChute channel where you can find all of the podcasts as well. She says, I am not any business or anything. I'm an old widow that just wants the truth to be found and justice to happen. I've lived in shadows for years, fearing he would find me, but now I'm too old to be afraid. In fact, as soon as I realized who he was, I have tried to find out if he's still alive, in prison or nursing home. I believe my story, which is true, is something that will greatly benefit your search. It's very frustrating to see movies and news that say that the Zodiac has been identified when I know very well they are wrong, and I know who the Zodiac is, and no one will listen. So I actually did an interview with this gal. I took about 2 pages of notes. She has an extremely interesting story. Her finding of the individual or the composite that she believes closely matches the man she's told me about was the second composite of the stranger seen at Lake Berryessa, which we have kind of, or Dennis acclimated that to be in Denny Terrence. I acclimate that probably even maybe being Dawn. However, this whole entire story that she told me took place down in Chino Hills, which is right next to Riverside. And that is a key location for Donald Terrence. So I sent her over pictures of him to take a look at and to show her son. She had a very, very odd experience. The bottom line is the individual was ex-CIA. And a lot of the things that parallel what Jack is into, such as having police officers as friends, judges as friends, things of this nature, this individual also had. So I am discussing with her coming on and talking about her story, which I think would be a great story for everybody to hear, so that you can see how law enforcement and judges and other people react to somebody who's ex-CIA or who is CIA. To me, it's a great analogy for Jack and his ability to get away with the things he got away with. Now, as I was doing my research this last week, and I'm sorry, you guys, I hope we do actually touch the first murders of the Zodiac today, but I ran across an actual website. That website does have some similarities in design to some of the websites that I've viewed involved with Tom Voight, Jake Wark, Mike Butterfield. I will have to go back and look at their websites, but it'll be fairly easy for me to make that determination once I see it, because no two people actually build their website, just like no two people write alike. So I know I've seen the platform before. It's kind of like when you realize you have a Chevron card and you have a Toys R Us card, but they're both owned by the same bank. And when you go in to pay the bill, you notice that the entire setup for the payment system is completely the same. And then you find out they merge, and now you can access both your accounts from one login. That's what I'm talking about when I talk about this website that I skipped across, and it's called not the Zodiac Terrence, or something to the effect that I had literally built a website or started one where I was putting this information on from my presentation, and they were waiting for every piece of new information to drop on the website. And then they'd go back to their website and they'd try to make me look like I was lying, or that I wasn't telling the truth, or that the information was bad. Either way, if I can find it, that means my public can find it. So I just want you guys to kind of understand the type of lies that they're trying to tell, or they're trying to deter you from believing any information I give based on some of the stupidest things I've ever seen in my life. And one of them actually started out with, Nanette has a new site up trying to convince the unsuspecting that Jack Terrence was the worst killer in the history of the US. Not surprisingly, she hasn't added much new information, just the same stuff she's been recycling over and over for past couple years. It's actually a good thing for me, because we've already disproven so much of what she said that now all I have to do is copy and paste our replies to the nonsense on her new page. I think this is awesome. So I have put on one of the pages that Jack Terrence's description, age in 1968 through 69. He's 40 to 41 years old, height 5'10", half inch, weight 225 pounds. Next to that, I said Zodiac description, eyewitness accounts, estimated 35 to 45 years old, height 5'10" to 5'11", weight 240 to 240 pounds. And we want to key in on that 240 pounds because they did. They say, can you see how Nanette and Dennis Kaufman have cherry-picked the parts of all of these descriptions that fit Jack? He doesn't match any of the individual descriptions. Now, you guys hold that one to heart. But if they pick out bits from each description, they can make it look like Jack fits the bill. None of the descriptions say 240 pounds. So I wonder where they got that.
How about a simple typo, folks? I've seen many of them on all of your guys' websites. The 4 is right next to the 5, and maybe I didn't clerically edit it afterwards to make sure the information was absolutely correct, but it's definitely within the realm. It's not like I said 280 pounds and Jack was more like 300, so that fit my suspect by bumping it up 40 pounds. I'm still within inside the range of the descriptions that have been given. So I went ahead and I tallied all of the descriptions from Michael Mageau, Brian Hartnell on his first round with the detectives, Brian Hartnell on his second round with the detectives, Officer Donald Folk's description, who saw him at the Presidio and the Stein murder, and the teenagers at Lake Berryessa that gave, or I'm sorry, the teenagers at the Paul Stein murder that gave a description of the suspect as well. Now, if you look at where the blue stars are, something like short, 5'8", let's take into consideration Michael Mageau is sitting down in a car. So his ability to determine height at that point probably did not have a bearing or a gauge to determine that by. I would have to say that if I was sitting down looking up, I might assume that somebody was shorter than they actually were, because if I was standing up, I would have a better gauge. At the bottom, it says in another blue star, 26 to 30 years of age, but the police officer notated in the file unable to judge real well what his age was. And that's because all he really did was get a side view of the individual. He didn't actually see his face straight on. Now, the other items in here, real heavy set, beefy build, not blubbery fat, but real beefy. And we see that Jack is not blubbery fat. He's got this solid belly on him. Short curly brown hair. Light brown hair, almost blonde. You can see in this picture, especially when it's blown up, we're going to look at it later, that particular hair color does appear to actually take on a blonde hue when the sun is hitting it right. Of course, this is at night, so I don't know what light would have been behind Jack that would have allowed this individual to see his hair color, because, of course, the flashlight that Jack is holding is likely blinding him at that point. Either way, the other items that were here that I starred are actual matches to Jack. In the Brian Hartnell, the dark glasses matches Jack. He does say that he has observed brown hair sticking through the hood. So I have that one starred as blue. And I'm not going to say that Jack didn't have brown hair. We're going to look at some of his hairstyles and his hair colors and how they appear in pictures. Appeared to be heavy set between 200 and 250 pounds. So those three out of the 4. I didn't cherry pick anything, everybody. 75% of that information that he gave was consistent with Jack. In the second particular description that's given, wearing a black hooded mask, cloth covering the entire head and shoulders coming down almost to the suspect's waist. This is a match to the hood that was found by Dennis. Victim states on the front of the 4-cornered type mask. Now, this is actually the police officers' insertion, similar to a paper bag in style. 4 corners. We're going to talk about that. He does not say the head portion looks like a paper bag. He said the entire 4-cornered type mask. So top to bottom, 4 corners, typed mask, the entire thing, similar to a paper bag in style, which we'll look at, and I'll show you how that's true. Wearing sunglasses that were clipped onto the front of glasses that they could see through the eyelets. Again, hair seen through the eyelets observed as dark brown, lightweight windbreaker, dark blue or black, pleated slacks. The clothing between all of these witnesses all seems to be extremely similar. Again, identifying that they're dealing with the same type or the same perpetrator. Hartnell stated that he believed the age of the suspect was 20 to 30 years of age by voice concept. So not by visual concept. He had no idea what his face looked like, and he believed that based on his voice that he was 20 to 30 years old. Now, I am not sure how one could determine somebody's 20 to 30 years old, or how they could determine age by voice, unless you're super old and you have a crackly voice versus super young and you have a child's voice. Either way, I did not even mark this as something to consider, because I don't think that you could tell somebody's age by their voice. He said between 5'8" to 6 foot, 225 to 250 pounds. Again, the dark brown hair, sloppy dresser, stomach hanging over trousers. Again, we can see that. Spoke with some type of a drawl, moderate, not too high or low pitched, but he sounded uneducated but not illiterate. And I thought that was an interesting statement again, too. Why is this man trying to make so much of a description based off of a voice? You don't know how somebody reads or writes based on how they speak. I mean, that sounds a little ridiculous. Dallas. So he sounded uneducated, but not illiterate. I'm not sure how you're going to tell that by the way somebody speaks, whether they can read or write. Officer Donald Folk's description was the white male at 35 to 45 years of age, about 5'10", 180 to 200 pounds. Now, I put a gold in the inside of this blue star because that is still relative. If he's wearing a baggy jacket and maybe you can't overall determine his size, 200 to 225 pounds, depending on how Jack's carrying that weight, especially as solid as it looks here on Jack, he could have very well have been 225, and the officer saw 180, 200 from what he could remember. Either way, it's still within range. And he did describe medium to heavy build, light colored hair possibly, graying in the rear, may have been the lighting that caused this effect. So let's keep in mind when we're looking at these other possibilities for hair colors like dark brown underneath a hood where you're only seeing a piece sticking out, that it very possibly could have looked dark brown when it was actually a reddish brown or another color that's being described by these other individuals. Several of them say that he was wearing a crew cut, wearing glasses, again, the same type of clothing, and this one with a shuffling lope. So we get to hear a lot about this lumber that the Zodiac had, and this police officer described it here, and Jack actually had that. So if we go back and we look to see what was here, and I didn't do it over here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 5 out of the 6 on Brian Hartnell's next description are a match to Jack. And then we've got 5, 7, 7.5, 6.5 out of 7 descriptions from the police officer in the Presidio is a match to Jack. Then the teenagers gave a description in the cab driver, Paul Stein's murder, in his early 40s, heavy build, reddish blonde, crew cut hair, wearing glasses, again, with the dark clothing. And 3 of those items, which, I mean, obviously the clothing, I don't know that I have any pictures of Jack actually wearing the clothing that's described here other than the brown trousers. These 3 items all clearly match Jack. So I ask, where is it that Dennis and I are cherry picking anything if out of all of these descriptions and all of the items that's been stated, I only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 4.5 items out of all 5 of these descriptions that are not consistent with what we know about Jack, but all have explainable circumstances as to why the witness may have produced inconsistent or incorrect information. Now that brings me to Jack's pictures, and I'm still compiling these because you guys, I have like 11,000 files. So to go through them all, I have to individually look at files to find things and then label them properly so I can easily return to them. I just wanted you guys to see here that Jack very much started out as a blonde. And obviously his hair over the years continued to darken. We see a dark brown here. Jack, I also believe, is not a stranger to hair dye. We've seen him in 1975 with black hair. These pictures are a little bit better when they're reduced down. As I blow them up, they tend to pixelate, but you can kind of see the roots coming out here, which is gray, but the backside of Jack's hair, which looks like it's growing out of a black dye. And then we see here, again, this very dark hair up here on top, which again almost suggests that Jack is literally dyeing his hair. As we go through the years, we see different colors, we see different styles, but he definitely has the curly hair. When it grows out, we can see over here all of the curls that are jumping around on his head, the waviness as it grows out and the curls that he gets there. So he goes from crew cut to long hair, obviously, throughout his life, back and forth, almost as if changing his look each time he's I think every time he's done some type of a crime spree, he immediately begins to change his appearance and his look.
Based on the shots of the face, that you can tell that his weight is fluctuating as well.
Hugely, huge. I mean, I look at this picture right here of him at GE in 1963, I believe this one is. And then this one is 1971.
He looks younger than the one on the right.
Right? That's what I said. Yeah. A little bit of weight made him actually look a heck of a lot younger. All right, so laundry and research. I don't need to go over these. I'm just going to flash through and give everybody a second so that you'll be able to pause it when you're back at home and you're reviewing. This is where I pulled the information from the police reports in regards to the descriptions so that you can clearly see I've not made anything up. And here's the one from the first interview with Brian Hartnell. Here's our second one with the second officer, John Robertson, and Brian Hartnell. This is Donald Folk's description in regards to it. Let me make, oh, I do have some start areas I did want to cover. So in the Officer John Robertson's, it shows he had known Cecilia Shepard for some time. They were good friends, and she had come to Napa County area to spend the weekend. She and a female companion, Delora Lee, from Loma Linda, San Bernardino County, California, had driven from Southern California. So that confirms the presence of Cecilia Shepard in Riverside with Sherry Jo Bates, which we've already talked about and confirmed that she was a fellow student of Sherry Jo Bates. The next one here is, this is actually where the police officer prints that this subject was not stopped at, as the description received from communications was that of a Negro male. So this is the reporting officer clearly stating that they were given false information, and Jack was able to get away because of it. Oh, here's another one. This is the teenagers that gave the description in the Paul Stein murder. So you'll be able to stop and review that. And then we get back to the hood, which is always a great, interesting mystery. So these guys attack the hood, and my basis on the hood from this particular website we were talking about. And it says, interesting how they can twist things to make their guys seem more promising, isn't it? Well, there's more. Here comes a doozy of a lie. Are you ready for this? Nanette Bartow said, this link will take you to the press release on the Zodiac Killer hood being discovered in Jack Terrence's old PDA system by Dennis Kaufman. He says, truth, the FBI has never, I'll say that again, never confirmed that the hood that Dennis pulled out of the PA system was the hood worn by the Zodiac Killer during his attacks at Lake Berryessa. Nanette's statement is intentionally misleading. In other words, a big fat lie. No, the big fat lie actually comes from the individuals that are perpetuating this belief that this square top hood is anything but the original hood, or the hood that Brian Hartnell described. And we're going to pick that one apart right now. So I want everybody to see this is the original description, as we've talked about before. There is no square top that's being donned like by Robert Graysmith. We also see that the signature attached to this composite is exactly the same signature that is attached to the composite of the Zodiac sighting in San Francisco. Now, they even tried to allude to the fact that my belief of these being clear framed glasses, I believe that they said because Jack wore clear framed glasses. They said, how about the fact the individual who drew the composite did not want to obscure the face by coloring it in? It's already obscuring the face. You've taken up that position and space in that person's face by even drawing the glasses. So by coloring them in, that wasn't going to deter you from seeing anything from underneath these glasses that you couldn't see to begin with. And that's just silly, and I think that was stupid. I believe that the composite was drawn accurately to what the police officer saw, which was a clear frame glass. Now, on Tom Voigt's website, I find this new one that's printed as of, I think, 2021, called Mysteries at the Museum. Look at this new hood, Nolan. This was just done on the Travel Channel. Now, of course, there's no eye holes. So, of course, their Zodiac would have been blinded by the fact he can't see. But look at the material, square in form and sewn all the way around, just like we see of the composite that was originally drawn by the SFPD police officer. And they even actually make note of it in their commentary. Mysteries at the Museum also featured an unusual representation of the costume worn by the Zodiac during the attack at Lake Berryessa. It's not unusual. It's real. That's exactly what the hood looked like. It's exactly what was found in in Jack's PA system. It's exactly what was described by Hartnell. Now,
except
let's
take the eye slits.
Well, yeah, except for that, but the actual shape and form and everything else of it is the same. So we know what Robert Graysmith donned it as. We're not to that one yet. Let me go to here. In his book, this is Robert Graysmith's Zodiac, and this is a reprint, so it's not the original color. Let me get my glasses here. Where are we at? 744. Oh my. All right. He said, behind the tree, he had donned a ceremonial midnight black hood. Now, this is where Robert Graysmith writes square on top, but he doesn't say how that square is. And if you look at these particular images here, this is square on top, right? So he says the hood hung down over the stocky man's shoulders almost to his waist and was sleeveless. Front and back panels came down over his chest. This is identical to what Dennis found. The top was flat, he said. Now, flat is just straight across. Flat. Nothing more, nothing less, guys. Not this whole box shape. It doesn't say box shape on top, like a paper bag upside down. With stitching around the edges, blazoned in white on the bib-like was a 3-inch square cross placed over a circle. The end of the cross protruded past the circle. It glowed with an orange tint from the setting sun. An orange tint. Well, it's actually gold that probably looked white in the sun, would be my guess.
The Graysmith version looks more robotic.
Yeah.
The one on the far left and the ones on the right look more human.
Nothing out of material would stand up like that. So if anybody has logic in their own brain, nothing would appear like that. Now, here's where we get to the square part of the paper sack. In the actual statement from Hartnell stated that the assailant was wearing a black ceremonial type hood, square on top. Now, square, look at this. You got, oh, shoot, square, guys, square. Like a paper sack. Now, the reference to the paper bag in style actually came from the police officer. I wanted everybody to see here that in the report said victim stated on front of the 4-cornered type mask, similar to a paper bag in style. He did not say which direction. And to me, when I look at this paper bag folded up and laying down flat, it definitely is my idea and perception of this particular hood. So if we go here, and as he states again, square on top, there's the square, and 4-cornered. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, like a paper sack. 1, 2, 3, 4. He's talking about the overall style of the mask. He's not just referring to the actual top portion of this hood. So if the officer is the one that wrote down similar to paper bag and style, this is where Graysmith got his information through his investigation and research, and then blatantly lied to the public and made his own assumption as to what that description meant. But nowhere in these descriptions do I see that it says it has 4 corners on the top of the hood at all. The 4 corners is referring to the overall mask itself and those 4 corners that we see. 747. All right. Next thing they want to make a lie out of is Nanette and Dennis love to use this one to compare to Jack. Oh, gee, see how much he looks like it. Oh, good Lord. That's a coincidence. I can't make that up. Anybody can look at these pictures and say that these guys look similar. But they go, there is one major problem with this comparison. This is not a real Zodiac composite, he says. How can that be, you ask? Dennis Kaufman himself said that it was, and that it was drawn in 1975. Well, Dennis doesn't have a clue. And since Nanette takes whatever Dennis says and runs with it without ever checking her facts, she doesn't have a clue either. The above composite was actually drawn by Denver Post staff artist Joe Barros in 1971. Mr. Barros did not speak to any of the eyewitnesses that saw the Zodiac. He merely used the SFPD composite as inspiration. See for yourself in this February 1971 article from the Sunday Times Herald. Now, you guys, if there weren't, I'm going to say this, assholes like Tom Voight, Robert Graysmith, and other people out there disseminating the information, we wouldn't have this problem. But here, let me show you in Robert Graysmith's book, if we can see this here. I'm going to read what it says right next to it. It says, Commission Zodiac Composite by Sonoma County Sheriff Don Stripke, done in 1975. So my year's not wrong. They are referring to it as the Sonoma County Composite because of Robert Graysmith. So it became a nickname. I did know that Joe Barros was the one that actually wrote it. I just did not know who he worked for. Turns out he actually worked for the Denver Post, obviously in another state. But when I researched and came up with that, it says that the Sonoma, even on this this is Jake Wart's site, and Jake Wart is actually stating that I included a second supposed Sonoma police composite, which had surfaced with little documentation other than it was referenced on a respected Zodiac website. So a respected Zodiac website would probably be somebody like Tom Voight, as they like to let everybody believe. But this is the Zodiac speaking, run by Jake Wart. Jake included the composite with a limited comment, which simply stated it is unknown why Sonoma County would issue a Zodiac sketch, as no Zodiac crimes are acknowledged in this area. They have the hitchhiker murders in that area, folks, and the Zodiac stopped telling us about who he was going to kill. So he was a likely suspect for this. The actual guy who drew it, Barros, achieved some notoriety in the early 1970s when he created police-type composite sketches of the Zodiac Killer based on descriptions and the sketches in the San Francisco police files. His sketches were published across the country by the AP wire services and ran by Sonoma County and Santa Rosa County in their newspapers. So basically what this is telling us is that he used the descriptions. So this jackwagon statement back here is that he merely used the SFPD composite as inspiration is complete BS. He used the descriptions given by the individuals and he compiled his own. Did he need to interview these people? Not if he had everything that they said, because that would likely have been the same thing they told him. And he created this composite, and I'm sorry, but lo and behold, it absolutely matches Jack. All right, you guys, I'm going to have to end it here today and let you guys go until next week. I thank you for coming. Thank you for sitting in, Nolan. Everybody have a wonderful weekend. We'll pick up where we left off on these lies and them trying to discredit me. But I think that we can see so far, I've proved everything that those people have stated as being wrong.
See you next week.
Yeah. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Oh,